Yep.
Right. Well, I'm speaking today about the eyewitnesses in Dealey Plaza and their accounts of the shots that they heard. Not just the things they saw, but the things that they heard. And the reason for that is that the acoustic recordings that were analyzed for the House Select Committee investigations raised a tremendous amount of fuss because they said, well, there's a good probability there's a fourth shot in the bushes there by the fence on the grassy knoll, and that means there was a conspiracy. But there's a lot more to it than that. That is not really enough, and there were arguments over that, and there were discussions about what was wrong with the dictabelt recording, and I can't hear no shots, you know, that kind of thing. And it turns out that there's actually more known now about what was going on in that recording. But also, you look at the witnesses and what they said, and there are contradictions between that and some of the other analyses that people made. So until my study, there's never really been a proper study of what witnesses said about the timing of the shots. The Warren Commission, in an executive session, discussed what witnesses were saying at a sort of early stage where they said, well, they're sort of saying there were 3 shots and there was more space between the first and second and the second and third. And they said, oh, yeah, that's what they're saying, or the same or equal spacing or something. And they never took it any further than that, just to kind of, this sounds interesting. The House Select Committee actually hired a psychologist to study the sounds of the shots, but his job, apparently he was tasked with, was to figure out if people could work out from the sound of a gunshot where the gun was located compared to their position. Was it behind them? Was it in front of them? Was it to their left, to their right? And it turned out you can't really tell, largely because a bullet is supersonic. And you can't tell when it goes by where it actually came from. Just like if you hear a jet flying over very fast, jet's over there, your sound's still coming from over this way. Something like that. And so the conclusion of that was that there wasn't really a conclusion that could be made, but nobody studied what the witnesses said about the timing of the shots. But they did actually say a lot. The Warren Report and other sources commonly described it in terms of the usual statement that 3 shots were heard by most witnesses. Now that isn't, well, that is true, but it isn't the whole story. Now back before or after the Warren Report, a Nobel Prize physicist named Luis Alvarez did an analysis of the jiggles in the Zapruder film on the theory that if you're filming something and you suddenly get a shot, you go, oh, 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 every time you hear a shot. And a little startle reaction could make your camera jump a bit. And he published a more formal paper. This was based on an earlier study for the CBS special investigation called Can We Now Believe the Warren Report? They concluded yes, while I had read the same book and I said no. Okay. Now Alvarez came up with this diagram showing the jiggles, and essentially this is the motion of the camera. I think it's the vertical motions that are plotted here, matched against the Zapruder frames. And it's basing the theory in part on the idea that that there's a short delay between the timing of a shot and the bounce of the camera, because it takes time for the sound to travel, whereas the bullet travels a lot faster, about twice the speed of sound, roughly. And so he reasoned that the first shot was fired somewhere around 177, and there was a jiggle around 181, And then there's a whole bunch of jiggles. What are they all about? He doesn't say. Then he thought, oh, there's another shot there around 2:50. That's the one that hit Connolly. And then finally, way down at frame 313, we all know what happened there. 3 shots, okay. And look at that. There's a little diagram here pretending that the oak tree isn't a serious problem. That 3 shots from the Texas School Book Depository could be fired. It would be a pattern sort of like bang, bang, da, 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 bang again. Okay, take your time to aim. And that's completely against what all the eyewitnesses said about the spacing of the shots. And that really disturbed some of the Warren Commission members, but not nearly enough, in my view. Now, the acoustic tape was a dictabelt tape, and they digitized it and put it on a tape of some sort, and they corrected for the fact that they corrected for the speed of sound in Dealey Plaza, which is why they had weather records for Dallas for that day, to get the atmospheric pressure and the humidity content, things like that, which affect sound speed slightly. And they found that the dictabelt was actually running a little bit slow. There is, in the background of it, the sound of a carillon being played. And it sounded like a church tower, da, 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 that sort of thing. You could hear the carillon bells, which are nowhere near Dealey Plaza, and they all wondered what was going on with that, and why is that on a sound that's supposed to be from Dealey Plaza. And it turns out there were reasons for this being on there. Somebody else would have a microphone button open near a church. It was exactly 12:30, and somebody's playing the bells. Electronic keyboard sort of thing, even then. Well, both Baranak and Newman was a company that was assigned the job, hired to do the job of analyzing the dictabelt. They corrected for the fact that the speed of the dictabelt wasn't quite right, and everything else. And they found there were 4 shots. 3 from the Texas School Book Depository, 1 from the fence behind the grassy knoll. Now, in fact, their calculation of the location of a shooter from the book depository is based on the fact that they actually fired a rifle from there to record the sounds of echoes in Dealey Plaza. That's partly where our journal title comes from, the Dealey Plaza Echo. Their actual analysis, however, if you look at it closely, technically, as they say, in theory, it could also have come from the Daltex building across the street from the book depository. Their pattern was 2 shots, 1.65 seconds apart, a long gap of 6 seconds. This sounds familiar. And then 2 very closely spaced shots, one of which was from the grassy knoll. Supposedly, according to the autopsy, this one missed. Very strange. Okay. Now, when I read all this in Anthony Summers' book Conspiracy, and got intrigued by the fact that there were some contradictions about the timings and everything, and I think one of the paragraphs in it had corrected for the dictabelt speed and the other one had not, so it was all a little bit different. I invested in a set of the 6 volumes of the House Select Committee proceedings, the whole thing. I still got those. Someday they'll turn up in your auctions. So I thought, well, is there any other data about what's going on in Dealey Plaza? Well, there are all these people who heard things in Dealey Plaza. What did the witnesses who heard things, which I'll call ear witnesses rather than eyewitnesses, and see what they say. Okay, so I thought about the timing of the number of shots, their numbers, and their spacing, but the accounts do seem to vary quite widely. But in fact, there are only a few different ways in which witnesses describe the shootings. So I made up essentially three categories of witnesses. I went through the Warren Commission affidavits or testimony. They weren't always testimonies. Sometimes they were just an affidavit saying, I heard 3 shots and they were, you know, as longer space between the first and second, about 6 seconds and all that kind of thing is typical. And then I found a really clear account in the book of the CBS investigation and added that. So I had a total of 72 witnesses, and I classified them thusly. Group A, they described 3 rapid shots, approximately equally spaced, or in many cases, more space between the first and second than between the second and third. Bang, 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 like that. Some of them, you can see how that could just be 3 equally spaced shots in somebody's mind. Then there were those who recall in whole or in part was consistent with the acoustic evidence. A group of shots, a gap, and then more shots. And that was about 10 witnesses. And finally there were those whose recall was unclear, or in many cases were not asked to describe the sounds of the shots or their spacings. And if you come towards the latter part of the taking of testimony by the Warren Commission, they were obviously in a big hurry. You can imagine that counsel sort of looking out the window saying, oh, how many shots did you hear? Oh, I heard 3. Okay, and what about, you know, what did you have for lunch? That kind of thing. Skipping over completely any information they might have had about shots and spacings. So they weren't really very interested by April or thereabouts of '64. Now, to get a flavor of category A, we can talk about Robert Jackson. He was one of the photographers riding in an open press car in the motorcade and was just coming up to the Texas School Book Depository behind the limousine and the other cars. And he heard the sudden sound of a gunshot. And so the questions were asked. What's your best estimate as to the time span between first shot and second shot, or last shot? He said, oh, 5 to 8 seconds. Now, when I had to do my calculations, I tend to just average the shortest and longest time that an individual witness would say. So I'd say something like 6.7 seconds or something. Well, can you break down between the shots that you heard as to how many seconds elapsed between each one? Well, it seemed to me 3 or 4 seconds between the first and second, and about 2 seconds between the second and third. Very close together. And that's the key thing to say, very close together. Could have been more time between the first and second. I can't really be sure. Are you sure you heard 3 shots? Yes, sir. Okay. Now, I'll come to why they may not have heard the last shot several seconds later in a bit. But there were 36 witnesses, which gave clear numbers in category A, the 3-shot witnesses. Most of them said that the interval 1 to 2, which I call delta T 1, 2, was somewhat longer than the interval from 2 to 3. There's 6 category A witnesses said the 3 shots were evenly spaced, and they gave timings for that. But only 2 of these witnesses described the interval 2 to 3 as longer than the interval from 1 to 2. Now that tells me it's very likely that what you've got is a longer space between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. And there are more shots, but I'll come to that. 14 of those witnesses testified in detail about the time between shots. They quoted estimates in seconds. And people, as you'll discover in a few minutes, people are okay at making these estimates based on memory. They weren't sitting there counting, oh, 1 chimpanzee, 2 chimpanzees, 3 chimpanzees, to count seconds. But that's what my dad always used to use in the darkroom when he was printing photographs. He said, oh, I've got to give it a 3-second exposure. So you'll be sitting there saying, 1 chimpanzee, 2 chimpanzee, 3 chimpanzee. Anyway, people don't do that when they're an eyewitness to a murder. They just say, God, what happened? Well, what do I remember? Okay. Now, the average time between 1 to 3 for 13 of them, those are the ones who gave details. 14 witnesses gave a lot of details about the amount of That was 5.8 seconds. Now, SD is standard deviation. That is a statistical term that expresses the spread of values around a mean value. So that's essentially 5.8 plus or minus 1.1 seconds for all of them. That isn't the error of the mean value, that is the spread around the mean. Okay, that's pretty reliable, really. So roughly 2/3 of the witnesses provided estimates within 1.1 seconds of the average. I left out Mayor Cabell because he said, oh, it was 15 seconds. And we'll see later, exaggeration is a common feature for ear witnesses. Now for the category A witnesses, it turns out the number in each subcategory wasn't the same as the number that gave quantitative time estimates. So I had to muck around a little bit with my results to put in the people who didn't give quantitative time estimates but did estimate a ratio. And so that enabled me to give a little more weight to the ones with a longer interval in the first 2 shots to come up with an average. Didn't change results by very much, but in my view it made it more reliable. And the average, what people said, not necessarily what happened, but what people said, was 3.4 seconds for the T12 and 2.2 seconds rather for T23. So first shot, second shot, third shot, second and third shots were about half the time or 2/3 of the time as was between the first and second shot. Now that gives you a ratio of 1.55 plus or minus 0.14, and that's a standard error of the average given. That's not the same as the standard deviation. The standard error divided by the square root of the number of values. So that is the best estimate I could come up with for what witnesses were saying was the ratio of timings between shots 1, 2, and 3. And this sum differs slightly from 5.8 seconds because of the reweighting that I used earlier. Now, remember Alvarez, his hypothesis, there, bang, bang, da 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 da, bang. That just can't be right. Not from what the witnesses were saying. I worked out the probabilities, and when I got up to 99.9%, I stopped looking it up. Many tables don't give you data much further out in certainty than that. Another way to say this is that what Jackson was saying is very frequently what you get in the testimony relative to other descriptions. So you can't explain what they heard as errors. There was a second group of 10 witnesses. Remember group B? They heard a lot of closely spaced shots. They heard a gap, and then more shots or maybe a single shot. Jean Hill, who is often treated very badly by the Warren Commission and others, she had a very clear recall of events that seemed more like what Alvarez concluded from the jiggle analysis, provided we don't draw specific conclusions about the number of shots. And this was actually verified by one of the photographic analysts at the House Select Committee, who looked at the jiggle question again and was forced to concede at the earlier part of the thing where there are lots of jiggles, there can be any number of shots in there. You remember she was standing on the central grassy area, and you can see her in the sequence around frame 313. And I'll paraphrase from her testimony. In other words, I won't go through the questions and answers, just kind of say what she replied to. I think there were at least 4 or 5 shots, perhaps 6, but I know there were more than 3. First shot sounded like they could be fired with a bolt-action rifle, one right after the other. Maybe, maybe not. Then there was a distinct pause, and then I heard more. These were different, quicker, more automatic. In other words, something you don't need to pull the bolt, just pull the trigger. You can squeeze the trigger very quickly. You're not holding it down like a machine gun, but just each time you pull the trigger, you can fire as fast as you can squeeze. And there were at least 4 shots, she said. I could just almost swear I heard 5 or 6, certainly no more than 6. Another fellow, Richard Worrell, was standing in front of the TSBD. A paraphrase of his testimony. I heard 4 shots. There was another fellow, by the way, who said, when he was asked, he said, well, I heard one more than was fired that day. An idea of the pressure sometimes that people felt. But he said, I heard 4 shots. I heard the first shot, it was too loud to be a firecracker. For some reason, I looked straight up over my head. I saw 6 inches of the gun, maybe 4 inches of barrel and 2 inches of stock. Now, that's very specific. Then it fired again. I saw a little flame and smoke come out of the barrel. I glanced toward the president. He was slumping. I looked up again and turned to run. A 3rd shot was fired. I saw that too. I'm not so sure. You've got to watch where you're running if you don't want to fall over. Everybody was screaming. I ran for the corner of the building. As I got to it, I heard a 4th shot. They were right in succession. So if most witnesses estimate a total time for 3 shots of about 6 seconds, the Zapruder film shows the whole assassination took something around 6 or 7 seconds. How can the first class of witnesses and second class be reconciled? The answer is that eyewitness estimates of time duration are normally distorted and exaggerated in a very specific way. I went to the library at Senate House, wonderful place, and I came across a book called The Psychology of Time, which was written quite a long time ago, I think in the 1940s or 50s. And it included several examples of psychological experiments done with people to see what their powers of recall were, and in particular also about what their recall of time intervals were. Now, this wasn't always a shooting. This was, in some cases, it was a basketball game, and in other cases, it was some other event. And what you find as you go through the literature in psychology journals and even in legal journals, you find that these incidents can be staged in a classroom, and then, have somebody come in with a gun and shoot blanks at the teacher, goes, oh, and falls in. Then he gets up and says, all right, class, everybody tell me how long that shooting took, how many shots were fired, that sort of thing. It was basically always a demonstration of unreliability of eyewitness testimony. However, when I looked at all of the papers I could find, and I did this back in 1981 or so, so I haven't added to this since then, I found that witnesses consistently exaggerate time estimates by a factor of about 2, give or take a little bit. Now, you see the ratios there and the true time. Notice that the intervals of equal spacing on the graph are a factor of, are larger factors. And that's what's called a log-log plot, because the values actually range over such a large range that that you need to compress it using what they call logarithms. Don't worry about the technicalities. But I compared the amount of true time to the amount of exaggeration of ratios that witnesses gave. And where you see the points tied together, this was where stress was applied in the experiment in one fashion or another, such as witnessing a crime or just looking at somebody crossing the street. Stress always seems to tend to cause longer time estimates. So that's the same experiment in each case, where you see points tied together, but they are with or without stress. It comes in at roughly a factor of 2, especially for time intervals in the range of around true time of 10 seconds or less. So if we take a typical factor to be a factor of 2, maybe it's 2.1 or 1.9 or something, then the true duration of those 3 shots would not have been 5.6 seconds, but around 3 seconds. Okay, think about that. Now, remember Alvarez's first jiggle? Governor Connolly believed he was hit at frame 235, maybe I don't remember, is that still correct? Did he think of 228, somewhere in there, okay. And the sound of that shot would have reached the Zapruder, and there's a jiggle at 240, and the known rate of 18.3 frames per second. This says that shots 1 through 3, 3.2 seconds, if that's correct. Okay, between the first shot that did something. Now I think it's not quite what happened there, but remember what we said for the timing of the eyewitnesses. It is around 3.5 seconds for the first 3 shots. Okay.
Can you just explain that again? Sorry, I'm slightly confused. There's a first.
This is just the jiggle analysis.
So the
jiggle analysis shows where some shots were.
Jiggle is at 181, so the shot would have been before.
Or not 181. Yeah, the jiggle's at 181. The shot would have been before, a few seconds before.
Before that.
Not very many, it's about a tenth of a second.
Only a tenth of a second.
Well, let's see, what are we talking about? 5 frames, 18.3, about a third of a second.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Something like that. We don't know exactly. That's not very different from what I got from the eyewitnesses once you corrected them for this factor of 2 of overestimates. Now, is there any support for that? Oh, yes. From good old Chief Curry, who was in one of the lead cars, the police car in front of the limousine. So he was asked the questions, and he was a sort of a standard Group A witness. He said 5 to 6 seconds for the 3 shots. But among all the witnesses, he was asked to express perceptions in terms of the position of his car. That was going the same speed as the procession, 12 miles an hour, if I remember correctly. And so he was asked the question, can you give us the approximate location of where it was when you heard the second shot? It would have been just a few feet further because these shots were in fairly rapid succession. Okay, how many feet? Well, it's just an estimate on my part, 25 or 30 feet further along. Remember that number. Third shot, maybe 15 to 20 feet further. Now, the ratio of distances is very close to what we came up with, this 1.55 in witness accounts. Then, the testimony went to Curry's actual time estimates, which were very similar to everybody else's, around a total time interval of 6 seconds. But 12 miles an hour is 17.6 feet per second. So you can convert Curry's distance estimates into time using time as distance divided by speed. You get his distances give something like 1.4 to 1.7 seconds and 0.9 to 1.1 seconds. This agrees well with the estimates from other witnesses after correcting for the perceptual reporting errors. So why do they only report 3 shots? In most cases, only the first 3 shots. Well, Marion Baker, so they say, loudly revved his Harley-Davidson motorcycle and sped to the corner of Elm and Houston. People were screaming and panicking, and it's well known that a shocking event can cause subsequent events not to always register properly in the memory. A good example of that is Mary Muchmore. She took the Muchmore film, which features in various books and descriptions. She didn't testify, but Lyndall Schoenfeld, what a name, described her film this way. She photographed the motorcade as it came down Main, turned into Houston, and proceeded down Houston. She says she heard the shots. She panicked and didn't take any more pictures. But looking at her film, she actually did take more pictures. Just before the headshot that hit the president, continued for a short period after that. Now, in other words, she filmed the headshot, but didn't remember having filmed it. Okay. So the memory sort of went blank at that point because of all the other things that were happening. And that's not an unusual thing for many of the witnesses. Some had a full perception, I think, and most or many did not. So what about the number of shots? Can you reconcile it with acoustic evidence? I assume the acoustic evidence is valid, but we've all read there were only 2 shots that could be fitted in the shooting sequence. Well, there is another impulse on the recording, and Dr. Barger listed 3 impulses at 0, 1.65 seconds, and 2.75 seconds. Okay, and that sounds a lot like what I was talking about with 1.65 seconds. You just about work a bolt in that time, but just over a second, you can't work a bolt in 1.1 seconds. And they rejected it because you can't fire that rifle so rapidly, which is true, but they're looking for a conspiracy. Oh, well, we can't consider that there were any other rifles anywhere around. But what about the one? Well, but this shot, the acoustic says it came from the school book depository or somewhere around there. Come on. This is illogical. It's not scientific. It's a political reason to reject an impulse and not a scientific reason. We've heard eyewitness accounts about 2 men in a Texas school book depository. Some people said there were, and at least one of them had a rifle. So maybe there were 2 men up there shooting, or maybe there was someone in the Del Tex building shooting. Don't know, but you can't just throw up the data because you've already made an assumption that only one rifle was used. Okay, but impulse timings agree well with properly interpreted eyewitness accounts of the shots. You can readily interpret the Zapruder film to agree with 3 early shots in the space of just under 3 seconds. An early shot misses the car, but causes JFK. I don't know if you ever watched the Zapruder film in slow motion. He's going like this, and just before they go behind the sign, turns suddenly to face forward, his arm comes down, and then when he comes out from behind the sign, he's going like this. Now, do you remember a book by a chap named Latimer about Kennedy and Lincoln? And he came up with the idea that a shot in the back that comes close to the spine caused something that he called a foreburn reaction, in which the hands go like this. Now you look at those pictures of Kennedy, he's not going, ugh. He's going like that with his fists. His fists are clenched. He's going like this, with his elbows up in the air. He's not going like that.
I always thought it was like trying to undo his tie or something like that.
No. He's got his fists are well in front of him, just raised up. Look at it again, run it in slow motion a few times if you can.
Latimer was the guy that said he had a Carcano C2766, right?
Sorry?
I think Latimer was the guy that claimed he had a Carcano, which was C2766.
Well, that'd be a big surprise to me.
Because it's in that Martha Moyer ordering the rifle.
Oh, no, that part I don't believe he could get the rifle out of the National Archives.
No, he had a separate
Oh,
rifle.
a separate one with the same
With the
serial
same
number.
serial number, yeah.
Oh, that's very strange. Okay. But anyway, the point is that Kennedy reacts quite clearly, brings his arm down, turns his head sharply, then disappears behind the roadside, and when he comes out, he's doing that. So maybe he was hit again just before he emerges into view from behind the sign. So I don't think the first shot hit anyone, because if that was fired from the Texas School Book Depository, would have hit the oak tree. And we all know there's also a shot that missed completely and ended up wounding a spectator named Tague on the other side of Dealey Plaza, and there was a bullet mark on the curbstone. I don't know if that was the bullet that missed or if there was something else that went on, but these guys, if they were professional assassins, they were not very good at it. At least, not in the original scenario. They missed. They hit Kennedy well down on the right side. What was the third thoracic vertebra? Yeah, just to the right of that. And that would be enough to invoke a spinal reaction. Then there's a third shot. That hits Governor Connolly around 2:35. Witnesses in category B, a group of shots and then a pause, seem to agree with the full picture as seen from the Zapruder film and with the acoustics data. Nothing in my conclusions requires that the acoustics data be correct. However, they match up extremely well, and my results are independent. So, what conclusions can I make? Eyewitness accounts tell us there were 3 shots close together over 3 seconds, followed by 1 or 2 shots several seconds later. The sequence is consistent with the Zapruder film. Spacing of shots is so close together, you can't fire the man with the Carcano rapidly enough. And so there had to be 2 guns in or near the schoolbook depository or Daltex building. This is also consistent with the jiggle analysis, provided you interpret it correctly. It doesn't rely in any way upon that latter. Now, in 2001, a forensic analyst named Dr. Thomas published an analysis of the statistical treatment of the dictabelt recording. Now, if you remember, the HSCA essentially relied on comments on the probability of each of the shots. You know, is this a shot or is this just static noise? They used the methods that he showed. Their methods were erroneous because you can make a better analysis. For example, I think it involved a question of whether 2 echo impulses in the same small time interval should be treated as 1 or as 2 hits, essentially, in the probability analysis. But he showed if you analyzed it properly, you came up with a probability for the grassy knoll shot of 96%. Whether that shot actually hit Kennedy in the head or not, we can debate, but was there a shot? Yeah. And there's one other point to make about recorded impulses that tells you something about the probabilities. They are found in chronological succession of the pathway of the open microphone on that motorcycle. There was a motorcycle in Dealey Plaza that was sending these recordings to the police department to be recorded on the dictabelt. You've all heard about this.
You talk about McLean's.
McLean,
by
I think it's
H.B. McLean.
Yeah. Well, he always said, "Oh no, it wasn't me. Couldn't have been." It was. You can. How can you deny it? You know. But there you are. People do deny these things. But the point is, they weren't just randomly spaced. Oh, you know, the first shot was in position 3, and the second shot was in position 1. No, they were in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in direct order. So I think that's another argument that they are real. And so I'm convinced that the acoustic analysis, when you interpret it in a better way, is correct, and it also is consistent with what eyewitnesses said. And there were a lot of shots, at least 4 and probably 5 in my view. One of them, either the last shot or second to last, I can't remember. I think the last shot was from the maybe I have it backwards. It was from the grassy knoll, and another shot from the school book depository or Daltex building was the one that hit Kennedy in the back of the head. Now, there's one other anomaly that I haven't discussed, which is the fact that there was a small wound in his throat. Now, the Warren Commission tried to make that into a magic bullet that went through Kennedy, hit Connolly, caused a massive number of injuries, and came out looking as if it had been fired into a bucket of water. by a forensic tester. Now, I just don't buy that. However, we have, you know, it was found on a stretcher in the hospital after the event. But we also now have Paul
Landis.
Landis.
Yeah.
He says, after 60 years, which is the strange part, he says, found a bullet in the back seat of the limo and didn't want anybody else to take it away, which is fair enough, but picked it up and took it inside and put it on a stretcher. I don't remember exactly what stretcher they thought it was, but nobody's really sure where it came from on a stretcher. But that's the origin of the magic bullet, if he's telling the truth. If he's not telling the truth, I don't quite know what's going on. But that magic bullet, you know, the other theory was that somehow Jack Ruby put it on the stretcher.
Gurney or whatever, yeah.
You remember the Seth Cantor debacle? When Seth Cantor said, well, I was at Parkland Hospital and I felt a tug on my jacket or sleeve or something, and turned around, sure enough, it was Jack Ruby. He was what we call a known goer to events. And he said, do you think I ought to close my place? And Jack Ruby denied consistently that he had been at Parkland Hospital, and Seth Cantor says, I know the guy. You know, everybody in Dallas knows him, but in particular I knew him, and for all I know they went to the same synagogue. But I think they were both Jewish. Ruby certainly, and I'm pretty sure Seth Cantor was with a name like that.
Do you want to see if you can find a Zapruder film to run it? Can you search for a good copy?
Have you got one on here?
Well, I haven't got one saved, but I'm just wondering if we could find. You can also slow it down.
Oh, you got Zapruder film? Yeah, we'll slow that down. You got it with or without sound?
Slow motion stabilised.
Yeah,
try
lovely,
this one.
lovely. Okay. Here we go.
And hang on a second, guys.
Yeah, you got
You
it.
can slow it down. I don't know how you do that.
Try the cog, Neil.
Cog here.
Yep. Playback,
Playback
speed,
speed.
normal.
Do you want to do it? So if you want to do it,
1.25.
okay. And let's
Go back to the beginning.
and let's try and get this to be big. Shall we?
To blow it up, you'll need to use one of the buttons at the bottom right. That's the one, yeah.
Okay, guys.
Okay, guys. You want to just listen to?
Okay, I didn't want to bring one along. Watch Kennedy as he approaches the. We
Hang on
already.
a second. Do you want to use the pointer as well?
I want to run it back to the beginning.
Hang on a second.
It's already,
It's all right. It's all right. Let's just see what happens.
yeah,
Okay, you see how his hands came up?
Oh, there we are.
But he's
Yeah.
got, it's like this. Not going like this, he's going like that. Well, it's a mystery to me where the wound in his throat came from. The doctors at Parkland definitely found one. I don't know if you can see the yellow paint. There you go, you see the yellow
Yeah,
paint?
paint that curve. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, so, yes. Okay, you guys can,
Can you go back and run that again from the beginning? Sorry. And Mike, if you think it's 4 or 5 shots, right? Could you just, as an exercise, could you turn around and just point at the screen so we can see where?
I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, of course.
So if you just
Pointed at that.
this works. Look, this works. So if I give that to you, and then you can just.
Jackie's looking at me.
Okay,
Right,
that's
let's start again. Let's start again.
the first, go back before the sign. Do we have, well,
Right,
before the sign.
I'll play it, and if you ask me to pause, I can pause it as well. If you want.
Okay, stand by
I think
the
this,
pause.
yeah, this one begins.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this one? Is this?
Yeah,
Is this?
I think
Is this film too advanced?
Yeah.
It starts at 2:10.
It starts too late.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's find another one. Let's
Yeah.
find another one.
You need it going into the sign.
Hey. See if,
Slow motion.
Tony, quick question. If you're to show the Zapruder film, right, in any capacity,
This isn't really part of my
I'm
talk.
sure you
I know, but it's just.
it's their film.
It's interesting that you've got a view.
I think it comes a lot down to.
Okay, this is tough.
Well, first of all, how you.
No, this looks like a court.
And the second is.
Just bear with me a second, I'll
Small histories or something.
try again.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
I get
we're
that.
not charging people to come and we'll charge you £10 to come and watch that.
It's open, how many versions of it on YouTube that haven't been
Yeah,
shut
I-
down?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It's just obviously.
Was the Mauser an automatic weapon? So it's developed as well.
The
These
HD one, I
are
think.
individual frames.
The HD one at the top?
So that's only 33 seconds. Ah,
That's, yeah, that's the one.
That was okay, watch
hang
that.
on, hang on, hang on. Let me just.
It's perfectly good for the job.
Hang on. Right, it's still a quarter. Okay.
They make out. It's just
Quarter speed.
Right.
recovers.
Okay. You tell me when to pause.
18,
Okay, well, we've got a way to go here.
As good as
Can
any.
you move forward a little bit?
Well,
It doesn't let you?
I'll
You
wait.
can
Never
speed it up.
mind, these are the two outriders here.
Here it is.
Their job is to brush the crowd back.
Notice how still all those women in that there.
Mannequin
They
Row.
don't move.
And so, yes, it's Brutus wasting
Yeah,
film on
photographs, they're
that,
clapping.
but never mind.
it's always what is it?
Here we go, watch this. See, he's waving at the crowd, he's smiling, looking around, he's looking to his right now.
Yeah.
Okay, he's gonna wave again.
Guys, can you listen
He's
to Mike?
waving,
Yeah.
watch.
Hang on. Shush,
Watch.
guys.
Try and
Quiet.
listen to Mike.
Keep going. Okay, he's happy, he's waving, he's, okay, but watch what happens just before he goes behind the sign. Wow, his hand comes
Yes,
down,
he does
his
that.
face snaps forward,
Can you replay that?
Yeah, play that again, please.
just those couple of seconds, that's enough. Okay, let's go again. Watch. Whoa, something's
Yeah, it does
happening.
that.
He sure is
The
paying
trees
attention.
in the way.
Okay, but now it goes behind the sign there, that frame.
So, he's reacting to a shot.
He's reacting to the sound of a shot.
And you
But
don't
he's not
think.
necessarily hit.
But he could be. Could he not
He-
be hit with
he
a
could-
shot in the back that doesn't
That's
penetrate?
That's possible, but watch what happens as he comes out of this, out of the sign, several frames later. And Connolly's trying to turn around,
Oh, he's shot there.
and
He's
he's definitely
reacting
been
there.
hit, he's definitely got that Thorburn reaction or whatever you
And
want to
Connolly
call it.
has not been shot here, has he?
No. Carry
so
on,
So this is shot 2.
yeah, probably,
So now focus on Connolly.
yeah, watch Connolly. Oh,
His
suddenly
cheek-
there, he's
Yeah,
hit,
his cheeks puff out, don't they?
yeah, something happens to him.
Let's have a look at that again.
What, the frame number, do they put the frame number on this?
Not this film, no.
Oh, no.
Watch Connolly's face.
Well, once he's turned around, he couldn't have been shot again.
Yeah, he's already
He's
been
falling
shot. He's
over.
already been shot.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And then,
So that's 4. This is shot 4, is it?
well, that's
5.
shot 3. We haven't got to the shots 4 and 5. Now, one of these shots hits Kennedy in the head, supposedly from the back. Another one is fired from the grassy knoll. Either it missed or it hit him in the head as well. And I don't know. Okay, there goes Jackie. So he's going after a piece of the skull, as it turns out. That's why she's doing. She's not trying to escape from the car. She's trying to retrieve a piece of
Piece of
Kennedy's head.
brain or something.
Yeah, well, it's a piece of skull. And the next day, they found this thing called the Harper fragment, which is a piece of skull on the ground in Dealey Plaza.
President's also flipped over as well, where his foot's actually hanging outside of the windows.
That, I think that was actually
The Secret Service
Clint,
agent.
Clint Hill's.
Yeah.
No.
I'm gonna run- I'm gonna run this-
I've studied that.
I'm gonna run
film.
this at
There's no
normal
way
speed.
that JFK's foot could have gone up in the air.
Well, a lot happens very quickly.
Yeah, but
It just doesn't, by the laws of physics, it doesn't.
Was it when it was Clint Hill's foot? Clint Hill's standing inside. Clint have to be kneeling like that over the
Yeah, but
car.
I don't see
It's
how
waving.
Kennedy's foot
Wow.
could.
Because he's
Down.
fell down.
2. Connolly.
I don't buy
Clint
that.
Hill's foot.
He's turned right round in the seat,
Then-
Connolly, yeah. And then he goes down.
Well, it's a
All-
minimum,
all
it's a
that-
minimum of 4 shots, isn't it?
Minimum of 4.
Definitely a minimum
And
of
the question, well, the question is whether both shots hit him in the head or just one.
No, just one.
I haven't read that.
When the headshot occurs,
Where's
comment.
that in the Warren Commission?
Is
Yes.
he pulled down or is he hitting?
Well, he's
like-
going
He's falling
down,
over
falling
his own.
back towards Nelly. I don't know whether she drags him.
I think she
She
does drag him.
probably dragged him down.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It might have been.
She
She
said
said
they tried to protect
Well, we've still got some, yeah, we've still got some time. Any more
sharper
questions?
question if we haven't already covered everything.
Yeah.
One quick one, Mike. Just to finish off on what you were saying about Seth Cantor.
Oh,
You
yes.
saying the debacle. You think that who was telling the truth? Him
Oh,
or-
he
or
is,
Ruby?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ruby was just trying to.
Cantor is a very truthful guy.
Ruby was just trying to deny that he was there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was a reason for that, because if he was there, there was some hint of his being involved in a conspiracy.
Yeah, and he was following the
That
events
is-
around.
Yeah, or something. I mean, the theory more or less was that he planted the bullet, and that he was the only conspirator there at the time. We don't know that that's the case. It turns out now, 60 years after the fact, we have an answer to who did what with that bullet, and we don't have a very good answer because,
With Landis.
with Landis, because that should have come out straight away, and it didn't. Okay, is that
Now I've got a question.
proof positive?
I've,
It confirmed, essentially the ear witnesses confirm the acoustics
Yes.
tape when interpreted properly.
for the article, the series of article I wrote on Kensington King, for the 60th, I went through all the witness testimonies into Dealey Plaza,
Yeah.
either affidavits or testimonies to the Warren Commission. And I came up with 60 witnesses that claimed that 2 of the shots came basically right on top of each other. Which of course, the Mannlicher, the FBI found that Mannlicher takes 2.3 seconds to operate. So if
I think they actually found you could work the bolt in 1.7 seconds, provided you weren't trying to aim again through a rifle
Well,
sight.
it's, according to the testimony and in the Warren report, it takes a minimum of 2.3 just to work the bolt.
I'm sure in the House Select Committee, they came up with a shorter interval.
Well, the House Select.
Well, maybe you're
you
right.
could do it quickly, but you couldn't aim it.
You couldn't
do
aim
it
it.
quicker, but you wouldn't.
You
yeah,
worked
yeah.
the bolt and pull the trigger.
I don't think the
You
House
couldn't
Select
aim it.
Committee actually done any tests on the weapon because they found it was so volatile.
There wasn't a very
the Warren
good
Commission
rifle.
did, though.
No, I'm convinced there was another rifle involved from the rear. But where that rifle was located, I can't say for sure, but it's conceivable it was in the Daltex or on the Daltex building roof,
So if you watch
somewhere
the,
like that.
if you watch the
Remember-
interview, what Mark Lane does with Lee Bowers, Bowers describes the shooting as bang, 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 like that.
Yeah, that's about right.
So that's basically what these 60 witnesses are saying, that the shooting sequence was basically one on top of the other. Now, some of that 60
The last two.
yeah, some of that
didn't
60
hear it, and some
say
did.
that it was the first and second were very close, but the majority of them say it was the second and third.
Those who say there were 3 shots
Mhm.
definitely say that it was faster for between 2 and 3. Oh, sorry.
How did
I
you do
turned
that?
this back on.
The other thing is as well, if the first shot hits the president from the front and the throat, would that also be consistent with him reacting to the neck wound? That motion.
No, because that was probably a reaction to a hit close to the spine. You know, it wasn't actually hit in the spine, but a bullet trajectory coming close to the spine could do that. At least that was Latimer's.
Have you done this with the frames? Because, you know, the shots and everything on the, have you actually done it with the frame numbers and stopped it on the frame numbers?
I have, yeah, but you can't be absolutely sure exactly what frame number a shot hit someone.
Yeah.
But
The frame's too long.
You've got some, haven't you? You've got 181 and 175.
somebody sent me a copy of the
175.
Budokan, but I didn't bring it with me, that has the House Select Committee shots on it, which sound like, which of course is wrong, because they said, oh, there's no third shot. Can't fire the rifle like that. Well, maybe there was another rifle. Oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah,
No,
happy,
it's
happy
all-
to say the two
when
close
the,
together then.
They told me not to say that, or,
Do you think that the wound, do you think the president was shot in the back of the head?
well, according to the autopsy, which is questionable, they think he was. But what is interesting is if he was shot in the back of the head, I think the throat wound could be a fragment that exited from his brain through his throat.
How would you then how would you then account for the vast witnesses at Parkland, Bethesda, morticians, etc., that claimed there was a massive exit wound to the back of his head?
Because he was still shot from the front as well.
No, but that's what I'm saying though.
Yeah.
You're saying.
Well,
that
I don't know whether both shots from the.
that was Tim Thompson's view, wasn't it? That there was, they
It's
were
always
practically
possible that
simultaneous.
if the sound of the
Yeah,
fourth shot,
two quick ones.
if
Yeah.
the sound of the fourth shot caused a little jiggle in the rifle of the Knoll shooter, it's conceivable he could have missed, but I think it's more likely that he hit him a second time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know exactly where,
Yeah.
but you know, that was their job. It was to ensure that whatever happened to the conspiracy, that Kennedy was dead afterwards, and never mind all the other stuff. They'll have people on the job who will pretend there wasn't a shot from there.
It's because he must have been shot from the front because the doctors at Parkland said there was cerebellum dripping off the car. And cerebellum is, of course, is at the back of the head. It's the
Well,
part
his
of
head
the
was
brain.
blown completely open, so, and pieces of his skull actually came off. One went out, flying out of the car, apparently was picked up later, and another one, I wonder if it had yellow paint on it. And the other one was on the boot of the car. That's what Kennedy, Jacqueline was chasing after when she climbed out of the car. Which, my God, you know, what a thing for a wife.
No, of course, absolutely.
Bad enough that he was having all these affairs with secretaries and things.
Well, to be fair, she was having affairs on him as well, so.
Well, yeah, I don't know all the details on that.
But how would you then explain that the back of the head and the autopsy photographs is virtually intact?
I don't.
Because it's all doctored. If
Well,
you use
because
the
they
expression.
No, I get that,
They
but
put
I'm
it
just,
back together or it was a fake.
Yeah.
Yeah, could have been.
just questions to try and figure out what's
Remember Lifton describing the wounds in Kennedy's head that they were describing, saying it sounds more like he was hit by an axe murderer than
Surgery to the head.
surgery to the head.
You've also got the
Crude surgery.
You've also got the snowstorm of lead particles.
Yeah, well, I think a small enough lead particle could conceivably have caused the throat wound in the last shot. And of course, we still have to account for the missed bullet that hit the curb next to Mr. Tague.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was really good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.